All right, let's get back to it. So you should, and we're going to draw the rocker arm drawing that you see here. We've already done our figuring. So HK, remember, is this large arc that's tangent, and it's tangent to the 0.75 arc, and this very top arc here that we find is 1.75 radius. Okay, and this drawing is it's not symmetrical in the sense that it's the same on both sides, but it does start in a center point. So for us to use that center point to our advantage, we're going to use that as the center of our paper. So when we start to center this on our paper, we're just going to use this as our center point. It's a little bit longer on this side than it is on this side, but it'll be okay. So when we center something that has a central center point or is symmetrical, we'll use our diagonals. So you're going to go ahead and just find the center of your paper using the diagonals. And like I said, it's a little bit longer on the left side, but you're not going to see that a whole lot of difference in the centering of this drawing. So we're just going to use it as if it was a symmetrical drawing and work off this main center point. So once you have your diagonals, you can do your center lines. And remember, center lines are a little bit lighter than the other lines. You'll end up erasing out some of those gaps and making this a little smoother at the end. But for now, we're going to use these center lines as our construction lines. It's probably a good idea to go ahead and erase any diagonal marks that you may have, because we're going to have to do the hexagon, and you don't want the marks to get mixed in with the hexagon marks. So far we found the center of our paper. We made center marks. We're going to use those center marks as these main center marks for the main center of our drawing. And some of these are just circles. So this smaller circle at the hub, we can make it. We can make the hexagon, but we're going to wait and make it at the end so we can go ahead and darken it in. And then we're going, after we make this small circle in the center, we're going to make this outer circle. And if you'll notice, it only gives us one radius for the outer circle. So there's a small portion of that 1.75 radius down here and up here. So that's actually a 1.75 radius circle that goes around this hub circle. So we're going to make those two first to give us some perspective on the drawing. From there, we'll proceed in making the small circles, and then we'll go ahead and use our numbers that we figured out to create the tangent arc and the tangent arc on the bottom. So the first thing we'll make is that 3-inch diameter circle. We don't have a 3-inch diameter circle on our template, so we have to use our compass. And this is in inches, so we're going to use our architect scale. And we're going to set our compass to 3 inches. Because, or actually 1.5 inches. It's a 3-inch diameter, so we need to set our compass to a 1.5 radius. So I'm setting my compass to 1.5. I'm going to use that center point, and we're creating this circle. It's a 1.5 radius. Our dimension gave us a 3-inch diameter, so our radius is 1.5. So set your compass to 1.5. So what we just made is this hub circle around the hexagon. Remember, we're going to make the hexagon last, but we made this 3-inch diameter circle, but we had to set our compass to 1.5 because we set the compass to the radius. Now, in order to make this outer arc, we're going to make that an entire circle, but that radius is 1.5 or 1.75. So we're going to set, since it's already a radius, we're going to set our compass to 1.75. We don't have to take half of it because it's already given as a radius. So after you make this one at 1.5 radius, push your compass out to 1.75. And then try to use that same little hole to get your needle point in. And go ahead and just strike this arc all the way around. At the top, you can make it a little darker. And at the bottom, you can make it a little darker. And you can actually, you don't have to make it all the way around, but sometimes you get going with your compass and it's hard to stop. But if you can, so what we made here is this outer arc, which ends up being 1.75 on both sides. So it's basically just a 1.75-inch radius circle all the way around. Then you'll notice on the drawing that between the main center and this outer center for the smaller circles is 3. So we need to go over 3 along that center line to create the center point for that small circle and that radius. So we'll go ahead and do that. And I'm using my instruments on everything here. Since we actually have numbers that we're working with, we've got to make sure that we're using our straight edge, make sure our instruments are flush with our straight edge. And my center line already went out far enough, that horizontal center line, so I just made a vertical center line 3 inches over. And we'll notice from that center mark that we just made to the other center mark, it's 5.62, so that's 5 5/8 on our architect scale. So we're going to measure from this center point along that horizontal center line, just so we can stay straight with our measurements. We're going to measure over 5 5/8, and then we're going to measure straight down 1.75. But if we go ahead and go over 5 5/8, we can make a center mark down and a measure along that vertical center mark, that 1.75. So we're keeping our scale straight. So the first step is take your 16 scale and put your 0 on this center mark, and you're going to go over 5 5/8, which is the 8th mark after the half mark. And once we have that mark, we'll just take our scale or our straight edge and do a center mark down. And then we can put our scale along that center mark to get the 1.75 dimension. And that keeps our scale straight so we're not off in our dimensioning. So once we measure that 1.75 down, we can take our horizontal straight edge and make that center line. So this center mark will actually go down here for the small arc and circle that we're going to make down below. So we went over 5 5/8 and down 1.75. So once we have those two center marks, we can look at the size of these circles. These are fairly small, so we can use our circle template. These are 5/8 diameter, this 0.625 or 0.62. We're going to say that's 5/8. So it's a diameter of 5/8, and both of those small holes, where it says 2 holes, both of those small holes are going to be 5/8. So if you're lining up your circle template, remember circle templates use a diameter, so we don't have to take half. We can just find a 5/8 circle and make sure that all your little tick marks on your circle template are lining up with your center mark. So the small circles are 5/8. We can go ahead and make those. And the outer arcs, we'll notice, are concentric. Okay, and we learned that concentric means they share the same center. So the outer arcs, it's given us a radius there. That radius is 0.75. So if we're using a circle template, we actually need a diameter, so we have to times that by 2. So on your circle template, that's 1.5 inch circle. So it's a 1.5 inch diameter on the circle template. My circle template only goes up to 1 3/8. So I can't use my circle template. I have to use my compass. So if I'm using my compass, it's already at a radius, so I just use my compass and set it at 0.75. But we're using the same center. Remember, concentric circles use the same center, so even though this is an arc, we're going to treat it like it's a circle, and we're going to make these at 0.75. So both of the ones on the outside here are 0.75 radii. So my compass is set to 0.75. I'm striking an arc. I know I don't need it all the way around, but I really don't know where my tangent points are going to be at this time. So I'm probably doing a little more than what's going to be needed, but I can erase what I don't need. And then the same 0.75 radius is on this side. So I'm using that same center point, and I'm striking an arc. I know I don't need the whole circle, but I don't know exactly where my tangent points are going to meet up just yet. The radius for each of these was 0.75, and the diameter of the smaller circles was 0.625 or 5/8. All right. So the next step is to make this arc that's tangent here and here. Okay? That's that big arc. That's what we were calling HK earlier. So if this is HK and HK has a 5 radius, we know that it's tangent to the 0.75 little r radius, and it's tangent to the 1.75 big R radius right here. So we have to use our compass to find this center point because we're not given a location dimension to that center point. All right? So we already did the math on that. We did 5 minus 0.75, which ended up being 4.25. So that's going to be the distance between this center point and wherever this mark is. So we're going to set our compass to 4.25. Okay? Now that's going to be pretty far out when you're rolling your compass out. So you need to be very careful not to roll it out too far and break your compass. So it's going to be fairly large. We're rolling it out to 4.25 radius, and that was from the math that we did to figure out where we need to create this arc to find our center point. So we're rolling it out at 4.25. That is the radius from this center point over here on the left. So put your needle at this center point on the left, and you're going to strike an arc. You might even go off your paper. Okay? That's all right, because we don't actually have to have the center point on our paper to create the arc. You can see mine is going off my paper. So this was 4.25 arc. The next arc that we're going to make is the one from this center point to where we think the center point is going to be here, and where the arc that we just made intersects the arc that we're going to make. That is the actual center point. So in our math here, we did 5 minus 1.75 because that was the radius here. So we're going to set our compass to 3.25 on this one. So set your compass to 3.25. You're going to put your needle in the main center that we started out with. Try to get it back in the same little hole. And you're going to strike an arc. And we want those to intersect. So our intersection is over here. That intersection gives us the center point for this tangent arc. So our tangent arc is 5. Now this may tax some of your compasses because some of your compasses are only 5-inch compass. So if it feels like it's going to go off of the threads, do not use it. Just borrow your buddies, because there's 6-inch compasses and 5-inch compasses. If you have a 5-inch, borrow your buddy who probably has a 6-inch compass. So wheel your compass out to 5 inches. Again, don't do it very quickly so it jumps off the threads. Do it very carefully. Put your needle point at the intersection that we just made. And then you're going to strike your arc that should be tangent to the top arc and the arc on the side. So if you did yours correctly, it will be tangent to the outside at the top, right here. So we successfully made an arc that was tangent to 2 arcs without the known center point. We found that center point. So you see how this can be powerful? We can find things and create things and maybe reverse engineer objects using geometric construction in methods that we can't normally do it otherwise. So once you have the top arc, we can look at the math for this bottom arc here, because we're not given that center point either. On this one, since it's tangent below and not above it, we're going to actually add that radius. So we did 1.75 plus 0.7, or 1.5 plus 0.75 to get the 2.25. And then when we did the 1.75 radius plus the 1.5 radius, we ended up with the same circle, that 3.25. So really on this one, we only need to make one arc, and it should intersect with the 3.25 arc that we already have. So we're going to set our compass to 2.25. So we're setting our compass to 2.25. That point where we're going to put our compass point, my 3.25 arc doesn't quite reach the arc here, so I don't have an intersection yet, so I have to actually make this arc bigger. So if you're in the same boat as I am, all you have to do is wheel out, put your needle point in that same hole and wheel your compass out so it's exactly in line with the arc that you already have, and just extend that out. Okay, so I needed this intersection right here. So this arc was a 2.25 radius from this center point. This arc was the 3.25 radius from this center point. So our next step would be to wheel out our compass to 1.5 inch radius, because that's the radius of the small arc on the bottom. So we'll put our compass at 1.5 inches, and we'll put our needle point in our new intersection here. And it should be exactly tangent to those bottom two circles, if you did it correctly. So this arc is tangent to the bottom two. And you can go ahead and darken these arcs in, because you don't want to have to go back over them with a compass. So circles that you make with a compass, you want to just go ahead and darken that in. So we found the exact tangent points for here, 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 and here using geometric construction. So the next step will be to make tangent lines on the other side. This is not an arc, this is a straight line. So we have to pick a tangent point here and a tangent point here to make this straight line. Same thing down below. So to pick tangent points, we simply line our straight edge up with the entities that we want to touch. So if I'm looking here at my triangle, I'm lining it up with a point here and a point here. And that forces, once you get it lined up with both of those, it forces your tangent point. Okay? Because it has no other way except at the 2 points where it is going to be tangent to line up. So once you get it lined up, you can create your line there, your tangent line. Same thing on the bottom. Line up and make sure you're going with the outer arc, not this inside circle. All right. So we have those two tangent lines. We would normally erase, any lines that we don't need, and we'd actually, you could keep a small portion to have like a little center mark down here for each of these, but we wouldn't keep the entire arc. But you can see on here, we only need partial amount of the circle that we made, so anything outside those tangent points needs to be erased. And then the last thing that we're going to make is this hexagon. And we know we've got to make it circumscribed. We're going to have to use our triangles. So when we look at this hexagon, we know we need to have it starting out at 15 degrees, which makes it a little more difficult making the actual hexagon, because then we have to flip our triangles until we get each of these other 15-degree marks. We can't just use our 30, 60 triangle like we would normally use. So we need our straight edge and we need both of our triangles. So we know this first one, the way we have it right now, is at 15 degrees right here, okay? So we're going to put the triangles just like we see them on my screen, and we're going to make it flush with our center point. So we're drawing along this line, so we need that surface flush with our center point. And these are going to be construction lines, so you guys need to just make them very light. Some of these will end up erasing. Actually, all the lines that we're making right now will end up erasing. So just make them very light. So you'll just strike a line just like this. And go ahead and do it on both sides of that center mark. So you're going to end up with a line that looks like that, that's 15 degrees. So this angle is 15 and this angle is 15. But we should be able to rotate it. Now remember, you want to keep it flush with your straight edge, your horizontal straight edge. So if you look at my straight edge where it is, I've got my 45, my 90 part is going straight up and down, and then I'm just putting my 30-60 like this. So essentially what we're doing is making center marks that are rotated 15 degrees. And then I'm going to line this top part up with my center point, and I'll go ahead and make that line. So now we have this rotated center mark. So you guys see how it's just kind of rotated 15 degrees? So let's go ahead. We're just going to set our triangles over to the side. We're going to go ahead and set our compass to the distance across the flats here, which was 1.75. Remember, that was the diameter, so we have to take half of that to do our circle. So half of 1.75 is what? 7/8?
Yeah.
Okay, so on your 16 scale, you're going to set your scale to 7/8. So it's the 8th mark before the full 1 inch. Nope, it's the 8th mark before the 1 inch. Once you get it set to 7/8, try to get it exactly in that same hole that you've been working on. And then go ahead and strike that circle. And since we have our quadrants of our circle, this is going to be a little bit easier to see because now we have that top quadrant, the bottom quadrant, and the two side quadrants already at the 15-degree angle. Let's get these sides right here first. So go ahead and do it like we first had it. You're actually going to be parallel to your center line. And then once we get those sides that are, and then we're just making a line because we know it's tangent and we'll end up erasing it, but just make a line like that. And then just slide it over on the quadrant and make another line. All right, so put your 45-degree triangle, like the 45s are touching the horizontal edge, and then set your 30-60 just like that. And then that is going to allow us to make the tangent point here. then my triangle is probably going to go off the screen, but you just slide it down and make the same tangent point here. So the last configuration, the 45 triangle, the 90-degree corner is on this side, and then we put this out long ways, like you see it here. And we'll get those last tangent points with the circle. And these last two tangent points, they should come to a point on that quadrant. So that's how you'll know if you're correct or not. What you'll end up doing is erasing everything that's outside of, you don't have to erase the center line, like the one right in the middle, but you'll erase all the little extra lines that we made for construction lines. So now we have a hexagon. So this is a good exercise that helps you learn how to use your triangles, and it makes us do 15-degree angles. The complexity in it is we needed 30-degree angles, but they're rotated at 15 degrees, so that makes it a little harder. And of course, our circle was a construction circle, so we'll end up erasing that out. So you definitely want to use your eraser shield on that part. So really, as far as the drawing part, when you get finished with your hexagon, you're finished with following the dimensions. It's just clean up after that point. So you want to make sure all your lines, your construction lines, are erased. Make sure everything looks good. All your measurement dots are blended in. And you will need to put a border on this. When you start out, if you don't have ortho on and O-snap, then you're not going to make straight lines, and you're not going to be snapping to the actual center point. It might look like you're on it, but you're not going to actually be on it if you zoom in. So when you start out, make sure you have ortho and O-snap on. First thing we did is start with center lines that we just kind of created in the middle of our screen. We came up here to the polygon command, and the first thing it asks is number of sides. We typed in 6. We clicked on that center point. It was circumscribed because we knew the distance across the flats, so we're going to click or type in C, enter. And then it's asking us for a radius, but we know the diameter, which was 1.75, so we had to take half of that, which was 0.875. And remember, anytime you type in a number in AutoCAD, you have to hit enter, so it'll take it. Now, our drawing, the polygon was rotated, so we're going to have to, it's rotated 15 degrees, but if you'll notice, the flat part was right here at the quadrant. So we're going to have to rotate it 45 degrees just to get it where it needs to be. So I clicked on rotate, and I click it on the center because it says specify base point. I'm going to type in 45, enter for my angle. So if you read your command bar, you're going to know what AutoCAD wants you to input. All right, the next thing we did is create that circle on the outside of the polygon. So we know the diameter for that circle, so we chose center diameter. I chose the center point, then I'm dragging it out so I can see it. I'm going to type in 3, enter for the diameter. The next thing we did was a radius circle. So the same thing, click on the center point, type in the radius. Every time you type something in, you have to hit enter. And then the next thing that we needed to do was create the center points for these small circles. So in our dimensions, we said that this was 3, and then from that one, it was back over 5.62. So we're going to offset 3. So I clicked on offset. I typed in the offset distance first. So in offset, you click on the command, you type in the distance. I hit enter. I click on the line that I want to offset, and then I click to the side where I want to offset it. Okay? I'm going to offset again, this time 5.62. And then I'm offsetting to the left. So that's where we are. Now, if we look at our object again, we know that we need to offset down 1.75 from this horizontal center line. So I'm going to go to offset. I'm going to type in 1.75, enter. And then I'm offsetting down. And I'm basically, everything I'm doing, I'm just following the dimensions that I have. So now this point is the center point for that small circle, and this point is the center point for the small circle on the other side. And we know those small circles have a diameter of 0.62. So we can actually make one of those and then copy it to the other side. And if we look at our drawing closely, we can see that the outside radius is also the same on both of those circles. So the diameter is 0.62, the outside radius on both of them is 0.75. So we can actually make two circles and copy it over to the other center point, and then we're kind of saving ourselves one command when we do that, so we're being a little bit more efficient, and plus you're learning how to copy. So we're going to go ahead, let's do the small circles first. So we're going to do center diameter. So we're going to click on center diameter. I'm clicking on this center point. So make sure that you have your O-snaps on so it'll actually snap to an intersection. And then that diameter was 0.62. Enter. Then I need a radius circle, so I'm going to click on center radius. It's asking me for the center point again, and I'm going to type in 0.75, enter. So without making those circles again, we can copy both of those over. So if I click on both of those circles at the same time, you'll notice that the little blue grips come up and it turns blue when it's selected. So I'm going to click on both of those circles, and copy works a little bit like rotate. So when I click on copy, it's going to ask me in my command bar, where is your base point? Specify your base point. Okay? So my base point is where I am now. So I'm moving it from the base point to the displacement point. So I'm going to click on the center of those circles because that's a common point, because I have the center of where they need to be up here. Okay? So the first thing I did is click on the center of where they are now. Now my command bar is asking me to specify the second point, and I'm going to specify this intersection where you see my mouse, okay, which is the intersection. I'm going to turn off ortho just for a second. You don't need to, but you can see when you have ortho on, it looks like it's going to go straight across, but O-snap will override ortho, okay? So even though my circles are down below my intersection point, where you see that intersection is where it's going to copy to. So all I have to do is click and it will put it there. Now the copy command will make however many copies you want, but we only want one, so we need to hit escape so we don't make multiple copies. So every click counts. When you click, it's doing something. So one thing that we can do first are these tangent lines. Okay, because remember, on this right side, those lines were just tangent. So you're going to have to listen carefully on doing this because, like I said, every click matters. So when we do tangent lines, the tangent O-snap is always the last to have precedence. That means every other O-snap will take precedence over tangent. So if I'm close to an endpoint, it's going to use the endpoint snap instead of the tangent snap. Or it's going to use the center snap instead of the tangent snap or intersection. So we have to purposely tell it to be tangent. All right? So we're going to click on the line command. We're going to type in TAN for tangent. And then we're going to click enter. And you'll notice that our tangent comes up. So I'm going to click somewhere where I think it will be tangent, right in this area. And I'm going to go ahead and click. Then I'm going to type in TAN, enter again, to force it to be tangent down here in this area. Okay? So you need to get in the general area. You can't just come over here because then it's going to be tangent on the other side. So get in the general area of where you need to be and then go ahead and click. And then you can hit escape. And it forces it to be tangent to those two spots where it needs to be. Okay? It's kind of like putting your straight edge up against those circles and finding the tangent point with your straight edge. So we're going to do the same thing on the bottom. We go to line command. We type in TAN, enter. And then we type in TAN, enter again. And we do our clicks. Okay? And it's always a good idea to save as you go. So we've already saved it one time and named it. So you can just come up here to these little icons across the top. And the one that looks like a 3.5 floppy disk that y'all have never seen because you're too young, you just hit save. Whenever we're creating our overarching arc here, we used a compass, correct? So what is our compass in AutoCAD? Yes, what is our compass? What do we use as a compass in our AutoCAD?
Circle.
The circle command, correct? So if we draw this like we drew the board drawing, we can create circles to find the center point for that 5 radius. All right, and we remember we subtracted 1.75 radius from 5 and got 3.25. So we're going to do a radius circle. So center radius. We're going to use this intersection. And we're going to do a circle with a radius of 3.25. And then enter. And then from the other side, we have a 0.75 radius, so 5 minus 0.75 was 4.25. So we're going to create a radius circle from this intersection with a radius of 4.25. So this little mark or intersection right here, what would have been a mark on our paper, is the center point for that 5-inch radius. So we're going to use another radius circle, and we're going to click on this intersection as our center point. Okay? And we're going to type in 5, enter. All right, so there is one of these circles that we don't need anymore. So to get it out of the way, we're going to click on it. So the 4.25 circle that we made from the center of the small circle, we're deleting it and getting it out of the way. And the reason being is because we still need to make this arc underneath here. And if you'll remember, that arc, we still need this 3.25 circle, so don't delete it yet. So we're going to make another center radius circle from here, and that was 1.5 plus 0.75, which was 2.25. So we're going to click on center radius and click on that center again, type in 2.25, enter. That gives us the intersection here to do the same arc except it's tangent underneath. So that arc that's tangent underneath is a 1.5 radius. So we're going to do center radius, click on the intersection. So I'm going to click on that intersection. I'm going to type in 1.5 for my radius. And it makes me tangent underneath where it needs to be. Now, you guys can trim, and you know that trim will clear out whatever you click on, but to save yourself about 100 clicks, we're just going to click on both of those circles that we used as our center point circles and just hit delete on your keyboard. And then you have a whole lot less to trim. Okay? So when we're trimming, you can click on trim. And I usually try to start with the outermost stuff, and that way you can work your way in. Now some of this, like I have to zoom really far in to see this little piece that's lingering over here that's tangent. Okay, don't trim your center lines just yet. Okay, so when you're trimming, you're just clicking on the lines. They'll go away, but you need to zoom in and make sure you're getting everything. And I'm just rolling my mouse in and out. Okay, that's how I'm zooming. Okay, wherever my mouse is, that's where it's going to zoom out. So if your mouse is way over here in the corner and you zoom in, you're going to zoom into nothing. So wherever your mouse is where you're going to zoom into. And make sure that you're trimming out everything that needs to be trimmed. Remember, this inside of that arc needs to be trimmed. And then we still have our center marks. We need to, get these under control a little bit. Mine are way too long. Yours might be too short, whatever it is. But if you click on a line, and it shows the little selection grips, I can click inside the endpoints of that line and it'll let me drag them down. So I can drag these center marks and make them a little bit shorter. Because remember, center marks are supposed to be just a little bit outside the part. So whenever I'm zooming in and out, I can make these a little shorter. Now, O-snap will sometimes snap it right back to the endpoint. Like in this case, it's snapping right back to the endpoint. So if I click in that grip and it doesn't move it, try zooming in and seeing if it'll move it that way. If it doesn't, then sometimes you have to turn O-snap off to get it to do what you want it to do. But just make sure, after you've done that, to turn your O-snap back on in case you need to use it for something else. So we're just cleaning up our center lines a little bit, having them just outside the part. And if your template is working correctly, you can actually change these to center lines. We'll go through an exercise where I'll show you how to create a template. But then we're end up with something like this. Okay? Once you get to where you want it to be and everything looks good, you can hit the save on it. It's always a good idea to do a zoom extents and zoom out one time when you hit save, because in AutoCAD it'll let you see a preview of your files. So if you've zoomed out, it'll show you the whole thing. All right?